Right off the bat, I'm a little bit overwhelmed this morning. And I had been thinking about this for quite some time when our county executive said that he wanted to dedicate the Pocket Park, where the former Nelson House Annex stood, to Dad. And as I said then, and I'll say now, my dad would be honored, he'd be thrilled, but he wouldn't have wanted it. But he would be thrilled, and I know he is looking down from above, that so many of his family, his close personal friends are here to share in this honor to him. And I wanted to say, on behalf of my family, my wife Lori, my sister Ann, my son Christopher, my great-grandmother-in-law, grandmother-in-law, is it great-grandmother-in-law? It's grandmother-in-law, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, members of the Sherry family, Louise Mylod, Dave Frederick. You know, there's so many people here that I grew up with and Dad grew up with too, that it really is very heartwarming to think that, you know, he was loved by so many and respected by so many people as well. I want to personally thank Dr. Dennis Murray. He wasn't acknowledged earlier. Dr. Murray and my father were very close friends for many years. My dad, one of my dad's biggest passions in the world, outside of being a firefighter, which I'll talk about in a minute, was his devotion to Marist College and being on the Board of Trustees. And I want to thank you for what you did for Dad. You know, when Dad was in failing health, they used to pick him up in a golf cart at the parking lot and bring him to the all-day meeting, and he would come home and we would go out to dinner and he would talk about Marist College and how important it was to this community, and that really kept him going. And you know, it's actually the anniversary of Dad's passing is coming up on the 29th of this month. He passed away on the 29th in 2007. And he really started here. You know, he was a practicing lawyer in Poughkeepsie for almost 50 years, and several of his offices were right here on Market Street. This is a fitting place where there'll be something to remember Dad when he walked this street every day for so many years. And also, Mark, which I thought was good, which we did together as a legislative and executive branch, is we also dedicated a couple other buildings on this block. And Judge Rosenblatt, who was here, dedicated the courthouse to Judge Rosenblatt, and he is here. Lucille Pattison, county executive, trailblazer herself, and a person that my father worked with and had so much respect for. We dedicated the county office building for her. This is the county seat. This is where everything happens. Market Street is just like Main Street. And I can tell you, Main Street matters, and Market Street matters, and this city matters, and my father loved this city. Even though we lived in the town of Poughkeepsie, he was a city guy, from the fire department to the police department to doing all the things that he did within this city. And this is really, again, it's overwhelming and fitting that the Department of Public Works has put this together, and Noel Nilly, the commissioner. And again, Mark, I want to thank you, and let's give a round of applause for our DPW people who did such a tremendous job. You know, I got to tell you, I did not really, up until maybe 20 minutes ago, have any idea what I was going to say. I have been struggling with this because there is so much to talk about with Jay Rolison. But I do remember in 1966 he ran, so in 1967 he took office and went up to the state capitol to be part of his swearing in with my grandmother and my grandfather and my Nana. And I was sitting in then Lieutenant Governor Malcolm Wilson's office, and I was sitting on top of like a shelf by the window, and there was a grate there underneath where the heat came up. And I got my button on my sport coat stuck in that. And they actually had to get the maintenance people from the state capitol to come in because we had to hold off the swearing in ceremony till I could actually go into the room and be there with my mom. And I remember my dad always would talk about that. He says, you know, I almost didn't get sworn in because of you. And I'm like, well, you did. And then, you know, you won, I think, another 12 times. So it worked out pretty well for you. But I remember then Lieutenant Governor Wilson saying to my grandfather, my papa, your son's going places. And he did. He did. He worked hard to get results for his constituents. He traveled all over the state and all over the country, did lots of things. But as FDR always wanted to come back to Hyde Park, Dad always wanted to come home to us and to my mother, who he adored. And that was the special part. Dad would leave, but he always came home. And he would call 25 times a day. Every time the phone rang during the day when he was in Albany, it was him. And when he was in Poughkeepsie, it was him, always checking in with Mom. And I remember he used to say to me, "Oh, the fire trucks went by today up here in Albany." There was a firehouse someplace near the Capitol, and his love of the fire service was always about fire trucks and where it was going and all of that. Because as many of you might not know, Dad was a lifelong member of Rough Corners. The fire service was, I think, the biggest part of his life outside of his family. And he had his fire gear in the trunk, and he had a fire radio, and he would go all over the place. And as a kid, he would take me to fires, and I became a fireman. That's where I really learned about community service, and I learned it from Dad through that. And he was very proud of his family, and we shared a lot of stories about government and what you would do. And when I became a legislator in 2003, I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you think, Dad?" And he said, "Collaborate with people, Rob. You've got to get things done. You've got to work across the aisle. You have to listen to all points of view." And I've tried to do that. I've tried to emulate Dad. Never will live up to probably the standards that he set for himself, but he gave me a lot of guidance, and that's what I've always tried to follow. And I remember one time we were having dinner, and I said, "Well, what do you think about this?" And he said, "Ask Steve Salan. He's a senator now." Like, okay, I did, and I got the right answer. And Senator, thank you for your friendship, and Linda, to our family. My mother and father adored both of you, and the fact that you're here today is very special. Dad was very proud of his grandson, Christopher. And Chris, I can tell you that if he knew that you graduated from DCC and then became a deputy sheriff, you know how proud he'd be, as I am very proud of you and what you've accomplished. But to talk a little just a bit about the fire department, because I think that that's really important. So he's a lifelong member of Croft, and he, actually the week before he died, I drove past Rough Corners Firehouse. He was sitting across the street in his car, and he was just looking at the firehouse. And I didn't know this, but apparently he did it quite regularly, and I happened to go by that day, and I didn't stop, and he was sitting there, and he had his fire radio waiting for the rigs to go out, because he loved that. He loved the action of the fire department. When they built the arterial highways, Engine 1 and Ladder 1 used to be at City Hall. And he used to come home and would be sitting at the dinner table, and he would remark how they went up Mill Street the wrong way. He thought that was the greatest thing, because cars would go up on the sidewalks as these two fire trucks would rip up the wrong way up Mill Street. He was always chasing fire trucks, always living his dream as a community servant, but specifically a firefighter. And one of the most memorable moments I know in his career was when he was made an honorary chief of the City of Poughkeepsie Fire Department. And he had helped the city. They were going through some tough fiscal times, and they needed fire apparatus. And he was able to secure money from the state of New York to actually purchase a couple of fire trucks, and they had a plaque on it, and they gave him that helmet, and I still have that helmet. But I will tell you, for someone who did a lot, that was the day, I think, that really stood out for him down on Clover Street. And I see Chief Mark Johnson is here from the fire department, and you were just a firefighter back then, I think, because you're in that photo. I want to close this morning by thanking everyone for being here. My cousin Kathy is here with her husband, Paul. They came from New Jersey to come up to this. It means so much. We sometimes take for granted what we do and how we get there and if we're successful or not. And none of this, elected life, political service, community service, can be done without a family. My mother endured a lot for my dad. I just kind of went with the flow like my sister did. He was out a lot. He was in Albany. And my mother was such a big part of his life that sometimes we need to really honor her more often. We talk about Dad a lot, but it was Mom who was here, who kept things going at home and let Dad go out and do the things he loved to do. And I miss them both terribly. I'm glad that we've had the opportunity this morning to get together as family and friends to talk about Dad and my mom in this park, which will be here forever, because families make a lot of sacrifices to let their loved ones go off and be cops, firemen, elected officials, community guardians, servants, and without that strong family, you know, it's tough to do. And I'm lucky that I got it. And again, I wasn't exactly sure of what I was going to say, because there's so many great things to say about J.P. Rolison. His love of the fire department, Croft Corners Fire Company for all those years, where he took me and I grew up in the fire service. His love of the community, his love of this city, this county, the Senate District. And Sue, thank you for those wonderful words about Dad. So as we go on today, I wanted you to know that he did this for us. He didn't do it for himself. And I think that's what sometimes make him stand apart from other people. That this was always about community. It was never about Jay Rolison. And he wouldn't want this honor, but I think he'd be thrilled that you were all here. So thank you very much, Mark, on behalf of my family. Thank you for giving this little piece of Poughkeepsie to my dad. It really means a lot. And I also wanted to invite everyone to Canvas right up on the 300 block for a little reception afterwards. So again, thank you. This has been an unbelievable moment in my life, my family's life. And Ann, we had one heck of a dad, didn't we? Thank you very much.